Paul Arrington, God bless you, sir. You're back.
I'm back. How are you doing?
Man, I'm good. I'm very excited to be here. I told you I've been having a lot of summer trips, which have been absolutely a blast. But I also miss connecting with people, miss talking to people, and it's this type of conversation is not something you can casually engage in, right? Like you don't just go to a coffee shop and sit down with somebody for an hour, right? like I'm stirring the coffee. I'm like, oh, you want to sit and just take the whole morning?
Let's just talk. Let's just go.
Let's talk or not talk. Did you ever see, what was that? Best in Show. Best in Show.
Incredible. Yes.
What's that the actress who has like the Botox face?
You're
who's
gonna go
married to the old guy.
Yeah.
No, but like the Stifler's mom.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And she has that line because she's dating the billionaire old guy, right? And she brought the poodle or whatever. She's like, we can talk or not talk forever. And the old guy's like, meh. That's a great one.
That is an underrated movie. I'm just gonna say, I love that movie.
Same crew made Waiting for Guffman. Did you see that movie?
Waiting for Guffman is fantastic.
Parker Posey, man, she's an incredible actress. And David Levine or Levitt?
Yeah, Levine.
Levine.
Yeah.
Incredible actor.
Incredible.
Yeah.
They did one about a folk group thing.
Oh.
Something about the wind. I can't remember. I have to look that. Now I got to look this up and watch them again because they're just really good.
Yeah.
Good
I didn't appreciate David Levy as much. Like he was great in those, and then once you saw Schitt's Creek, you're like, oh, this guy's actually kind of a genius. Like he was good in American Pie, and he was good in all those. Like he had his dry humor, but the depth of character that came out over that series was great. Anyway, listen, man. A lot of things. I email or text messaged you a couple weeks ago regarding interviews and an article that came out and all kinds of different things. Just starting it off, I had Mitch Cutterin, which I was very excited about. A couple weeks ago, we had a fantastic conversation. He actually reached out to me after the Norm Semenko interview, which was fantastic. And again, a lot of different perspectives. One thing that I wanted to ask you about in particular is hearing all of these different perspectives on salmon, on water, on energy. It's like, look, there's no resolution that will ever be found. Right? Because even if you look at salmon, Mitch was very quick to point out, he said, look, back in like Lewis and Clark day, there was something between like 1 and 3 million salmon running up the Snake and Salmon River. Okay. Got it. And Brian Brooks, actually years ago on my first interview with him, he articulated the same thing. It's like you could walk on top of the salmon going across the river. We will never have that again for a number of reasons, right? And anything short of having that again, people will point to and say, okay, but we used to have 1 million. Like we could have 50,000 salmon. And if we went from like 55 to 50,000, they're like, it's decreasing. And no matter what, it's not 1 million to 3 million, right? Yeah. So from a salmon population standpoint, there's no way to ever park this car back in the garage.
It's tough. I mean, that's a really tough question. You know, I'll just take a step back. I'm an attorney by trade, right? I went to law school, but private attorney practice wasn't for me. Sure. And coming into this role, I love this role with the Idaho Water Users Association. They give me, and frankly, the folks I represent exercise this latitude to say, we've got some really, really tough problems out there, water-related problems. Let's roll up our sleeves, buckle down, and find meaningful solutions. And I'm usually a pretty optimistic person. And frankly, I'm still optimistic on the salmon, Columbia River salmon issues, but it's tough sometimes because this argument is so political now. And, you know, we fight it in political arenas. We're not fighting it. We're fighting it in court or in political arenas. We're not sitting across from the table from each other, rolling up our sleeves saying, okay, how do we fix this problem? People are happy to find solutions as long as you adopt my solution. I'm happy to solve this problem. And so are we ever going to get salmon back? I don't know. I struggle to think that because of the way we're fighting or trying to solve this problem. It's tough. You look back, for example, litigation has been going on in the Columbia River since the 90s. First listing of fish was in the early 90s, and since then we've been in some level of court or remand to the agencies or whatnot. And under the Biden administration, President Biden, his administration said, all right, we're done with this fighting. Let's take a step back. Let's find a solution. And for 2 years, they mediated a process that resulted in a solution that the plaintiff's side of this, think the states of Oregon and Washington and the tribes and conservation groups, were generally happy with and were excited. They felt like they were making progress on their view of the world in terms of how the river should be operated. And the folks on the other side of this, the more, I'll say industry side, that's probably not the best term, but those who rely on the development of the river, the power, the navigation, those kinds of things.
Sure. Utilization of water.
Yeah, they were very frustrated.
Right.
And we had this political solution. And as any political solution goes, it's only as good as the folks in power, as long as they're in power. And as soon as President Trump and the new Trump administration comes in, we get executive orders. I mean, you probably saw that flurry of hundreds, the first couple days of his administration, just reversing everything Biden did. And here about 3 or 4 weeks ago, he issued an executive order withdrawing from that settlement agreement, saying, no, we're not going to get rid of this. And so it's tough to say, well, we get it back. I think there are ways. I strongly and firmly believe that salmon and infrastructure can coexist, but we're fighting it in political arenas. We're not sitting down and having the real meaningful good faith discussions about how to solve the problem. So it's tough. It's tough to be optimistic sometimes.
Sure. One, to this point, having an honest conversation.
Yeah.
Again, let me be clear. I don't know anything about what I'm about to tell you. Okay.
I hope I know something then.
I hope you do too. I was at Redfish recently, and we always fish off the dock. It's fantastic. Yeah. And it's like, we make all these jokes about catching Moby Dick because there are these big like sucker fish down there that are like this big. I'm like, I always make this big fanfare if I get one. I'm like, oh my God.
Yep.
And, boys and I are out there fishing, and I sent a picture to a neighbor, and he's like, yeah, that's minnow something or other. And he's like, that fish is actually quite responsible for killing the fish that Redfish was named after. I was like, what do you mean? He was like, that eats all the smelt from like the salmon smelt, whatever. And of course, he's texting me this, and I look down, and it's literally just a cloud of these fish. It's like you throw a little bread on the water, and they go crazy. And we're like, wait a minute, they're eating the fish that people are trying, like everybody's spending billions of dollars to try to get these fish back. And these damn like little things that I'm catching off the dock are eating all of their babies. Then everybody's having conversations about the dams. I'm like, okay, why isn't anybody saying that? Which I found really interesting, because it's like, if we're going to have an honest conversation, let's have an honest conversation that encapsulates all the warts. Like warts, like, hey, what are the natural, or you want to say this species of fish is invasive? I don't know. Yeah. But it is my understanding that there are species of fish that actually hammer the populations of salmon fry and smelt. And it's like, okay, well, if that's true, then the conversation we're having is really only focused on one particular thing, because that's the thing we can go after, right? And again, you use what you got.
Yeah.
What do I got? I can't go after the fact that there's this small fish that's eating all this other fish's babies, but I can hammer industry, quote unquote.
Yeah. I remember.
Did I get that right? There are fish that are doing this right.
Very valid point. I remember back in the 90s. I remember, I mean, you may remember this. If you were going to go get a hamburger, it had to be Black Angus.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like the advertisements and just everything was about Black Angus beef. And everywhere you went, come here because we've got Black Angus beef. As though every other beef was an inferior beef.
Right. They had a restaurant called Black Angus.
It was just brilliant, right? It was just brilliant.
Yeah.
Marketing, brilliant effort there. And sometimes to me, it feels like that here in the region. We focus heavily in terms of the articles, the conversations, all the stuff on the lower Snake River dams. Like that is the magic pill to solve all of our problems. And folks like Mitch would agree to this, I know, and Norm, and folks who live in this world recognize that there's a lot of things that impact. Yes, the dams do have an impact on fish. Hatcheries and hatchery fish historically have had impacts. They've made significant improvements to the way hatcheries are operated to minimize those impacts over time.
Oh, because the hatcheries themselves have deleterious effects on salmon populations.
Historically, there was concerns that hatchery fish who are raised in a different environment and different understanding would come out and would interfere, whether it be aggressively or other ways,
or competing for
with
resources.
The natural fish, competing for resources with the natural fish, and those who manage hatcheries in the region have done a really good job of trying to minimize those impacts. You've got habitat destruction. We build right up to the rivers and whatnot, and so we have to fix some of that habitat. You've got predation, to your point, whether it be
pike
fish,
minnows, by the way, pike
minnow. There we go.
Fish.
There you go.
Right. So I have never. And again, I'm very ignorant to these things. Yeah. I've had multiple conversations about salmon reintroduction or salmon restoration.
Yep.
No one has ever mentioned, by the way, there are these species of fish and all they want to do is eat the fry and like salmon smelt. Like nobody said that. It's like, okay, well, that's a real, like how much? Like how much has this impacted it?
Well, so these salmon are under attack from predation the whole stretch, whether it be in the reservoirs or in the lakes, these fish, or also down at the mouth of the river, down close to the ocean, sea lions and avians and other things that are just eating them up.
Right.
And so it has an impact, right? And there's all of these things. And then they spend most of their life in the ocean. And we know very, very little about what happens in the ocean. And so all of these things combined, it's easy to focus on one thing.
Right.
But the reality is there's a whole host of issues in their life cycle that have impacts that are a challenge. The way we harvest them, even still, we don't do it at the levels, pre-development where I think, what did Norm quote, destructive intensity kind of harvesting for
1938 or something.
Yeah, we're not doing that by any stretch. In fact, it's an incredibly regulated system now. But still, the harvest has impacts. And
speaking of sea lion and harvest, I years ago when my oldest was pretty young, we would take him to Monterey to aquarium. I love fish, right? Love saltwater fish. I had a saltwater fish tank actually in my room in college.
There you go.
I had a buddy whose girlfriend's dad. The girlfriend's dad had a fish store, and he was quite eccentric. He was a goofy kind of guy, but he had this failed fish store. So in his backyard, he had like 50 fish tanks, because apparently you can just leave fish tanks outside because they just fill up with water and nothing happens, right? So it's all like nasty and clean water and stuff. Anyway, so he had this fish tank, and he was like, yeah, man, I'll hook you up. So he gave me this fish tank, right? 80 gallons, and it was drilled for salt water, which is a thing, I guess. Anyway, the point is, I didn't have any money to go out and buy like the $400 filter. So I had to go to Ace Hardware and like put together a fish tank filter that would work. And it worked, bro. Like a combination of wrapping paper containers and like potting plant circle things. And I drilled all these holes and like got a pump. Anyway, so I'm a big fan. So we take him to Monterey, and of course you go to Monterey and you can't avoid the kind of historical tribute to what the sardine, I believe it's sardine, harvest used to be in that area. And there was that entire canning industry, and that's all gone. The only thing you know of it is what you read on the signs as you're walking past buildings. There's like, this is the old cannery building, or this is where, blah, blah. And that was in the early 20th century, right? So we had industry coming in that just absolutely decimated the sardine populations that were native to that area. And they're gone now. Like there is no canning industry there. And again, to Norm's point and Mitch's point as well, it's like, look, by the 1930s, salmon were obliterated, almost completely extinct. And yes, there have been strides there, which is fantastic, right? Like we have a certain population that's larger than the population at that time.
Yep.
But it almost seems like it's like, look, something happened before 1930, before the first dam was even built. Things happened that decimated that population. And we can't undo those things. But what we can do is hammer on the things that we have control over now, right? And that appears to be what people are doing, where it's like, okay, but we went from 1 to 3 million to like 5,000. And now we're talking about dams as the thing that's like hammering them. And again, dams, I'm sure, have a piece of it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not like, I don't know anything about these things, but I do know that we have like invasive species, we have loss of habitat, we have some industry things. We also have a drying, environment.
Yep.
So it's like, we're going to need more water for more reasons. And we're going to need to use more, of the water coming out of the snowmelt for recharge and things like that. So, and I'm sure that will be a conversation once we increase recharge sites, injection wells, and, maybe rebuild the Teton dam, you know, like what?
All the things,
all
right?
the things, right?
You're right, though. I mean, there's no arguing that in the past, the grand we as a society, we're not as mindful about our natural resources, and the way we developed them, the way we used them, are definitely had some room for improvement. We'll say. I mean, it was horrible in some cases. We can't go change that. All we can do now is the best with what we've got.
Right.
And the folks I represent, I mean, we operate in a developed river system. And so we work and we toil and we strive, whether it be, I'm in the irrigation industry largely, but there's same with the hydropower industry and the navigation industry. You do as much as you can to minimize the impacts of your system, whether it be state-of-the-art fish ladders, whether it be spill programs to move where you're literally foregoing power generation, foregoing income to spill more water over the dams instead of through the power turbines, right? Spill more water over the dams to get those fish out quicker and more safely. And there's a lot of good science. Frustratingly, in the natural resources world, we're often arguing the projects of today against the actions of yesterday, and it makes it very difficult to make those or to implement these improvements and these advancements. But you keep going, you keep trying, and there's a lot of really, really, really good work being done in the region to improve habitat, improve the way hatcheries are operated to minimize their impacts on natural fish, to improve passage and minimize the impacts on fish at the hydropower system. And I firmly believe all these things can coexist. I mean, humans created this, right? I think we can figure this all out if we work together. Unfortunately, it's really hard to get folks who are willing to work together to find the iPhone or whatever solution for that region.
Well, I also think, look, the iPhone isn't even the iPhone because are you getting the new one?
Maybe. We'll see. I don't know. When's it coming out?
I don't know. That's the joke. I don't even know when. I don't know what. I don't know what number it is. I don't know what features it's going to have. I just know there's going to be a new one at some point in the next 6 months. I'm just throwing that number out because that seems about right.
Every year.
Yeah. So it's like we're gonna have a new iPhone. Yeah. So no matter what, there's no point. What would be success for you? Is it getting the iPhone 1 equivalent? Because the iPhone 1, do you remember when that bad boy came out? People were like, oh my God. Like, look at this. Is it the iPhone 10? Is it the triple lens camera? Like, what is it? The front facing camera so you don't have to like selfie like what is it that people want that would be success? One thing that I've really realized in the political world, and again, I'm not in politics. I just talk to people that engage in it. There are absolutely positions where it's like, no. There is never success. There's only a direction of progress. And that could be whatever the issue might be. You know, like you want to, whatever it is. But once you're engaged with people like that, it's like, hey, what's success? Okay, we want 10,000 fish. Okay, 10,000 fish is success. Okay, well, like how about 11? Like I like 11. You saw that new Top Gun movie, Maverick, right?
Oh yeah.
They hit like Mach 8 and he's like a little
bit more. Exactly.
Right? And and in the power, let's say the power industry. Okay, how cheap is power? Let's get it a little cheaper.
Let's get a little less.
And let's get a little bit more. And by the way, that was one of the great things that brought the United States to the forefront as a world power. It was our capacity to have cheap energy.
Yep.
Right. And energy, speaking of, when talking about the dams and benefits, right? We have transportation routes, we have power generation. One thing that came up in the conversation is, okay, at this particular moment, some of the dams don't run, that perhaps sell power at a loss, right? And again, I'm not 100% well versed on all the nuances when they're at a loss, when they're not at a loss, they're run of river, they're not storing, all of these different things. If you've ever had the solar guy come to your house and he's like,
I have.
And he's got his little chart and his little polo shirt,
yes.
And he won't go away because you're telling him no, and he won't go away. And he shows you that chart. He's like, look, this is all the money you're making. And the question is always like, wait, I get that on my house today and I make that money today. He's like, no. Today you lose like a cent a kilowatt.
Yeah.
But In 10 years, you're over breaking even, and 10 years after that, you're making a dump truck of money because there's an inversion as the cost of power goes up, and cost of power in this area is going up like way past inflation. It's like 12% or something, right?
It's
the trying to get somebody from the not trying, Callie Younger from the Energy and Mineral Resource Department. She's coming on. Yeah. Good. So, and we're going to talk about why I think it was a double-digit cost increase, percent increase the cost of power. Anyway, the point is, power is going up way past the rate of inflation. So if you factor in like a 10% increase in the cost of power over, let's say, the next 5 years, it's not a foregone conclusion that those dams are running at a loss. And you go at another 5 years after that, and it's almost 100% guaranteed that we're getting cheaper power. So it's this mass investment that was made at some point in the past that's about to invert past the point of parity and start making us money because we own the investment. That's a huge consideration.
Yeah. And the other challenge is a lot of times when we're in something that is this emotionally and politically and culturally charged, we tend to just argue the arguments that make the best sense for our position. And so any hydropower system, you're going to have times of the year where you just got more water generating more power than you are actually using. That's spring, basically. Right? And so
spring.
Yeah, those have a nameplate capacity of 3,000 total amongst the 4 of the dams. And they do generate a lot of power in the spring because there's more water, and it's power that maybe the system doesn't absolutely need. But you know what? When we're having brownouts across California or in the region, we're a hot, dry. We just had the 6th driest June on record since 1885. It's a hot, dry June. People are cranking their ACs up. When you have these times, then you start relying on all of those systems. The nature of the system is you're not relying on everything all the time, but as it goes through the day and it cycles up and down or through the seasons, winter during the hot months or during the cold months, and you need your furnace and your heat. Right. You're using more power in the winter. And then in the summer with irrigation and AC and all of that, all of this is necessary. And so all of it's necessary. And so we can argue that, the system isn't making money here, but at times of the year it's invaluable.
Right. And there's the unknown of what will the value be in the future.
Yes.
Right. Because you have large energy systems that are large investments initially. And then there is a point when it's like, okay, now thank God we have it. Like that's the point of long-term investment and long-term planning. We
enjoy in this region some of the lowest power rates in the country due largely to our hydropower system. It's an inexpensive way to generate power. And we like this. That's part of the reason people come here, because we've got abundant, inexpensive power. And you start changing that equation, and it's easy in a vacuum to say, well, I'd be more than happy to pay $50 extra a month or whatever, when you start shifting the system. But in reality, that's just not reality. And then you throw into the mix that in our region in particular, but you see this everywhere in the country, this move to more green power, move away from natural gas, move away from coal. And
amazingly, people move away from nuclear too.
Moving away, right?
You wanted green energy.
Yeah, we're moving away from all of these things, which just places a bigger burden on the hydro. You should get someone on here who knows. I'm a little over my skis when I get too deep in the hydro discussion, because it's like anything else. It's technical. It's complicated. It's real easy to summarize arguments in 1 or 2 taglines, whether you're pro or con. It's real easy to summarize in really digestible taglines, but there's a whole lot of nuance and reality that you miss when you do that.
Hey, if you know somebody at Idaho Power that wants to come on and talk hydro, I got I'm trying to get Paul Kimmel on as well.
Oh yeah.
He's a big power and water guy. Yeah. But like I'm all for it, because again, I don't every time I have a conversation, I walk away. You know, you're the recipient of this many times where I have a conversation with somebody and instantaneously I'm texting them like, hey man, help me understand this. Cause like, I just heard these things, like, these are the people I like to, like, for instance, I'm having the, wheat growers on from Lewiston. Like, I want to understand what the systems of transportation are, like how much wheat goes through the Lewiston port, like all of these different things. And those are all pieces of the conversation, and to leave them out or to willfully neglect understanding their side, like, it's all well and fine to say, hey, the people that utilize the Lewiston port for wheat transportation, they should just use a different system. It's like, all right, that's fine. Go ahead and tell that to like the 3rd generation wheat grower has a business entirely designed around this transportation corridor. Same thing with totally different industry, but same thing with the alcohol licenses that we saw a couple years ago. They started modifying or talking about modifying how the alcohol licenses, specifically in resort towns, were issued. And all of a sudden, people were like, wait a minute, I'm in McCall, or I'm in, Coeur d'Alene, or I'm wherever. I literally bought a business, and part of that purchase was like this $300,000 alcohol license because we're only one of like 2 or 3 in the area that have them. You want to make it 6 instead of 3 alcohol licenses. Well, guess what? That's going to cut my investment from a $300,000 valuation to like a $50,000 valuation. You can't do that. So people base businesses off of existing regulation and existing, world systems, right? We modify those. Okay, great. Go talk to that person, right? Like so again, I just, every time it's like, I don't know, even know like what to think about this stuff.
I saw an article the other day. It was written by, I can't even remember. I think it was maybe one of our legislators, or maybe it was somewhere else, but it was,
this isn't the one I sent you, is it?
No.
Okay.
No.
Different. Great.
It was talking about compromise. And the gist of this article was compromise is weakness. You can't compromise. You can't, because you do so, you lose ground on your principles and on your values. And I struggled with that conclusion because the assumption is that compromise equals changing your values or changing your goals, changing your principles. And I'm trying to remember how now my mind just went blank. But the assumption is that the specific action is what it takes to achieve your goals. And so part of the problem we have with this is, well, the only way to save salmon is to breach the dams, or the only way to have navigation is to have the dams in, or the only way to do this is that. When at the end of the day, if you sit down and you say, okay, we've got communities that rely on fishing, we've got communities that rely on navigation for a whole lot of different stuff. We've got tribes who have cultural, spiritual, sustenance values that they place on the salmon, and we understand what all of our values are we place on this system. We can figure out, we can compromise not our principles and our values, but compromise in terms of how do we achieve all of this? How do we crack this nut in a way? And so I struggled with that article because the assumption was that your principles and the actions taken to achieve those values or those principles are one and the same. When you sit down with folks, you can figure out ways to maintain your standards, maintain your principles, maintain your values, but maybe do it a different way than you originally thought you had to do. And it's hard.
Yeah, you know who doesn't like compromise? My 8-year-old.
My 17-year-old in the morning when it's time to get up.
Right, and he doesn't like compromise because he doesn't have to have the burden of a functional life, paradigm. Like, he doesn't have to compromise or like it because he knows he's just going to take his position that he wants to play the Xbox. Bro, I still have my Xbox from like 2000. Ooh. When I turned 21, my dad got an Xbox for my birthday. It's still, they're playing like the same games I was playing. It's fantastic. And they hold up, man. And they're not internet connectivity. So like that's back when games were the entire thing when you got the CD, right?
Yep.
But they're like, I want to play Unreal Tournament, and like he wants to play the Mech Arena or like Mech Warrior. Like, no.
Yeah.
And there's no like, okay, let me play for 5 minutes and you play for 5 minutes, because children don't have a burden of functioning. They get to fight with each other. They get to hit, scream, yell, and then somebody comes and irons out the compromise. That's my wife and I, because we compromise, because anybody engaged in a long-term pursuit with another human being that doesn't want to just stab you in the neck, like you have to find the whole nature of like any compromise is weakness. It's like that doesn't play out in any successful long-term relationship, be it romantic, political, business, or anything. That's an absurd position to take, and it doesn't help. Right? Because if all you want is, hey, I want my position and everyone else be damned, if both sides take that, then you get an environment where you have so much vitriol and so much backstabbing and so much sabotage, because there is no other way to get what you want or get a piece of what you want. It's like, can we just work together a little bit? Right.
A little bit. No, you're exactly right.
And by the way, I think I know who wrote that article. It's called ChatGPT. So the number of articles,
yeah, there you go.
The number of articles that started coming out this summer on like people's Substacks, where I interviewed a lot of people. I'm like, there's no way in God's green earth that man or woman wrote that article. It's like people are referencing, well, I won't even give it away, but like people are referencing things like, there's no way. There's like, I talked to that guy or that gal for like 2 hours. There's no way that person, and they're just putting them out on these like hyper partisan, whatever position pieces. And they put them out like, apparently they're very voracious writers all of a sudden. Like they write all the time. It's like every week here comes out like another incredibly well referenced, like incredibly thought out piece on their Substack. And it's like, dude, you're just it's literally like, write me an article on how like, we should do this right now. I'm literally going to grab ChatGPT. I'm like, I am a hardcore right or left wing politician in Idaho, and I would like a 500-word article about how the compromises that have been made on my side in the last 10 years that had notably damaging effects. And then it'll just pull up like 3 or 4 of these things. It's like, remember that time we compromised on that thing? And it was again, by the way, you do it for both sides. It doesn't matter.
Oh yeah.
Right. God bless it, man.
It's
a good time.
It's a fun world.
Listen,
fun world we live in.
What a time to be alive.
Yeah.
God, I just, and again, I'm so blessed to be able to just sit and talk to someone like you. It's like, this is wild stuff. Because I actually feel more optimistic when I talk to you, truthfully, because I realize there are people working really hard to iron through this. Instead of just getting the like dump truck of like, oh, it's all terrible. It's like, no, man. There's some really smart people working this out. They don't have solutions yet, but they're working hard. And speaking of, I did originally get a hold of you because I read an article I sent you that essentially was like, hey, man, turns out all that water surplus, no, we're in like a horrible drought. And I said that to you like, oh no, I just seeded a grass. It's all going to die.
My lawn, what is going to happen here? Lawn. I'm watering my lawn frequently.
And aggressively.
This just ties right in to our prior. It's a different portion of the river. Let's move up a little bit. Sure.
But it's part of the water conversation.
Yes, it is. I mean, you've got development of the river all along, because we learned early on that the river systems in their natural state were not going to support the economies and communities we were building. We learned early on that we just weren't going to have enough water in the Snake River or Boise River or Payette River to support the agriculture we were developing in this state, the agriculture we use to help feed the world. And so you start building reservoir systems. And these reservoir systems made the rivers last throughout the year. But importantly, these reservoir systems are not just about this year, right? They're about next year and the year after. They're about storing water, your insurance policy, your bank account, storing water in times of surplus to use in times of need. And surface water management is incredibly complex and incredibly complicated. In Idaho, we get the vast majority of our water in the winter in the form of snow. And then in the spring, it melts and it runs off into our reservoirs and our rivers. And you have the natural flow or live flow of the river that is, maybe used right then when it's there. And as the season progresses and the heat comes up, that natural flow goes away and you have to start releasing water from the reservoir system. So to the average Joe or Jane on the street, the river just always looks roughly the same, right?
Right.
Even though maybe at some points it's the blue water natural flow, and other points it's the red water storage flow. This year we saw, we're seeing some of those challenges that come with surface water management. And it's challenges that we're going to be fine this year. The challenges that in future years we may see the lingering effects. So you looked in April, for example, all across southern Idaho, the forecast for runoff for our water supply was in the 120-ish%. And then spring hit, and it was amongst the driest springs ever. I think I mentioned earlier, June, since 1885, was the driest June, the 6th driest June in the last 140 years. And so what started at 120% in April was 67% or 80% by the end of June, like a significant reduction.
And that's in just a matter of months.
Yes. Yeah. And so, in the Boise system and the Payette, those reservoirs filled. The Upper Snake, eastern Idaho, did not fill. They were a little short. Now, they're going to have the water they need to get through this year because these storage systems are built to provide that water. But what happens when your runoff, declines like that live flow runs out sooner in the season. So now you need more storage. And so you're going to empty your reservoirs a little more than maybe you would have at 120% year. Right. At a 67 or an 80% year, you're using more storage, which means you have less to carry over to next year. And so if next year's a dry year, well, then it impacts it even more. And you saw the effects of this here in the Boise. This was in 22, I believe, where spring was shaping up to be a tough one like this, and the delivery companies here in the Treasure Valley were talking that they may have to shut off water in the middle of August. Now, what happened? Fortuitous rain in the spring, and it extended, and they were able to make it through, I think, to the latter part of September that year. But it just goes to show that, when you talk surface water management, it's complex, it's complicated. Another one, a couple years ago, again, we're 120% and in that spring, we ended up having hot days, so the snow would start to melt, and cold nights, so the snow would stop melting, and what melted would seep into the ground. And so what happened was this cycle of cold, warm, cold, warm. The water would melt, but it wouldn't make it to the reservoirs and the rivers in the amount that folks anticipated, and so we didn't fill the systems. And so there's so much that goes into it, and what it does is heighten the need to be more mindful in how we manage our water. And I think we've talked about this on prior episodes, but again, here in the Boise Valley, they have gone and put telemetry devices. All they do is just little devices that send the data of what's going on in real time so that the managers can see it from their desk. Instead of driving, it takes them a full day to drive up and down. They know what's happening in real time, so they can go address problems when they happen, where they happen, and not be a week later or whatever the case may be.
It's kind of like, not to say I'm so cool, but kind of like my Bluetooth lighting setup.
Oh, 100%.
It's kind of like, listen, we sit here, we adjust as we need.
Yes.
And that's it. Because if you can adjust in real time, not just a need for mindfulness and management, the thing that I keep coming back to, because Senator Cook is big on increasing water storage, and he has a real hard push this summer. It's awesome. Hopefully I'll have him on soon to talk about it.
Good.
But yeah, he's fantastic. And I feel like every time I talk to him, I'm like, oh man, like I'm an idiot, but I feel like you get this, right? Like I don't know all the nuances, but the things you're bringing up, it's that hyper flexibility to maintain a high level of resource distribution throughout this state that's experiencing mass variability in real time every single day. So it's like, look, you can't affect a hot day, cold night, incidental recharge, everything seeps into the ground. Like you can't affect that. The only thing you can affect is having a system that says, okay, look, here are the 27,000 problems we could experience.
Yep.
And this is the system that we have in place.
Yeah.
How will this system respond to each of these 27,000 problems? Now, if we have a hole in a couple of them, let's figure out how we can modify that system. But if we don't have a system that is flexible and adaptable to all of these problems, who knows what the odds are that one of those problems is going to happen, but it probably will. Like if it can happen, it's going to happen.
Absolutely. So that system in the Boise saves about 15,000 acre feet a year. we talk in terms of acre feet because we talk large quantities of water, but 1 acre foot is about 325,000 gallons. So we're talking a decent amount of water. In the Upper Snake, in eastern Idaho, things like recharge that are putting water in the ground when you have it, and then it resurfaces through springs that literally refill the river system. We've got to be more mindful with how we do it, how we manage these things that we're doing to help extend our water supply and make it more reliable for today and for future Idahoans. We've just got to be, because it's this year is becoming, I wouldn't say this is the norm, but we see more years like this where our springs are just weird and affect the supply for the whole season.
Right. So bottom line is expect unexpected. Yeah. Expect variability. So when I see an article like this and I freak out and I send it to you and you're like, hey man, welcome to the world.
Welcome.
Right. It's essentially, this is why so many people are so committed to building robust systems, to investing in technology, to increase precipitation, to increase water storage. I mean, obviously talking about rebuilding storage facilities like dam, or I get to finally see an injection well later this week.
There you go.
I'm very excited. I've been very pumped to see injection wells because it's so horrifying to me that it's literally like a tube that just drops down 500 feet and like, hello. It's like just flood an area.
Sounds like a jet engine.
Yeah,
it's pretty incredible.
I cannot wait,
as they recharge in these wells.
And those are different than there are large. You would know this in my former state. Lake Berryessa had a gigantic. There are like gigantic holes in reservoirs that were essentially just draining water into them. Those are different, right? Those are waters being utilized for things.
Was that a natural hole, or they drilled the hole?
Yeah, it's like one of the giant. It's like once the water gets to a certain point in reservoirs, it just spills over into this big hole and shoots out.
Oh yeah, that's a different thing. We have one of those over on a Waihe Dam, actually. Similarly, so when you get a Waihe Dam really full during flood season, that's a tough drainage. They often have dry years, but if you get a good wet year, then the water just flows over into, they call it the glory hole. It just
I didn't want to say that.
Yeah, I know. But and it's pretty cool. But it's that's different. That's a constructed spillway in a dam, whereas these recharge wells are drilling a hole into the ground and injecting the water into the aquifer.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the biggest concerns with injection wells, and hopefully I'll have somebody on to talk about them. One of the biggest concerns is actually quality of the water as it goes into the aquifer, because you have the natural filtration mechanism of the water seeping through gravel and lava rock and all kinds of things. But when you do an injection well, like if you have a diesel spill, near that injection well, that diesel is just going to flow right into that hole and go down into the aquifer. Or you have things like bacterial contamination and whatnot, things that get filtered out naturally that don't get filtered out when you have that injection well.
I think that's a good summary of the concerns that have been raised. And I can tell you the water user community is excited about, the groundwater users in particular, are excited about how recharge wells might play into the overall solution, and they're working with the local communities to understand and address those concerns. I mean, the ones that you can. I mean, sometimes they're just, when you first hear about this, sometimes in folks, the sirens go off in their mind and they can't be consoled. But to the extent that folks are willing to sit down and talk and say, let's figure this out, they're working hard to find solutions to or to address the concerns that have been raised.
I got you. Listen, I know you got a lot of travel this week. I appreciate you coming in. Have we missed anything? We've talked about a bunch of different things today.
We're going to come on next time and we're going to talk water and buying a home and what it means for easements and all that kind of stuff. But that's like a 4-hour conversation.
So I went to a water polo tournament this last weekend in Rigby. One of the guys I was there with, we were talking because I went to the tournament last year. My wife's on the team. She's awesome. They won both years. It's fantastic. It's absolute monsters. And last year, the guys, I had just met her teammates and they're like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I have a podcast.
I have a podcast.
Yeah, right. And since then, now they were like, oh, you actually do. So we were chatting about a lot of different issues. And one of them came up with he was like, listen, I went on a trip and he was like, got in my RV, went down 16, turned on, I think it's, 84, whatever it is. It's just, the point is, he's like, I go out through Star, Middleton, getting out that way, driving west. He's like, all you see is homes and all you see is lawns and trees. And he was like, where is the water coming from for these people? And they're not stopping. right? It's not like everybody's halting. They're like, no, let's not. And again, so yeah, I would love to talk about that next time because obviously in this last legislative session, we had things like requiring communities can't build all domestic wells for individual houses. That was a big piece, right?
In certain areas.
Yeah, like Mountain Home.
Yep.
Yeah. And we had, obviously the domestic wells, you can only irrigate, half an acre. You can't, if you got like a 4-acre plot, you can't, grow things or have 4 acres of lawn. Don't turn your neighbors in, or maybe turn your neighbors in. I don't know. What's the right thing? Snitches get stitches. I don't know what happens.
All of that. All of that. Just turn your neighbor in by making the phone call at another neighbor's house. The one you don't like.
Okay, that's funny because we just dated ourselves because who has a house phone?
I know. That's a good point. But at least we got it.
I'm with you, baby. Anyway, so again, progress in some of those fronts this last legislative session. But I absolutely do want to talk to you about development and water, but conversation for next time.
Yep.
All right. Thank you for coming in, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend.